In 1994, Oasis released one of the most important albums of the Britpop era, and in my opinion, the best work of their career, definitely Maybe. This album ended up breaking Suede's record and becoming the highest selling debut album in British history. This record has obviously been broken later down the line by Elastica and then again by the Arctic Monkeys, but what's interesting with Definitely Maybe is that it hit number 2 on the highest selling vinyl albums of 2024. That's 30 years after its initial release. In this video, I'm gonna explain why Definitely Maybe is one of the best, if not the best debut album in British history. I know there's a lot of people who are gonna disagree with that, but for the next 47 minutes, I'm gonna prove to you why Oasis was the best band to come out of the 90s and why their early work was just pure genius. So without further ado, make sure to subscribe if you married children and enjoy. This is everything you need to know about Oasis and Definitely Maybe. This is gonna be part 1 of my Oasis series. I might accidentally repeat some stuff from my original Oasis video from like 8 months ago, but in this one I wanna do a full deep dive on everything Definitely Maybe. To give a little context to the brothers' history and their relationship during these years, I wanna start the story from the very beginning. Noel Gallagher's childhood. Noel was born on the 29th of May 1967 in a poor Irish family who lived in Manchester. Now, if being poor in 80s Manchester wasn't enough, Noel also had an abusive father. It was in fact the guitar his father had won during gambling that originally got Noel into music. He even said in an Oasis documentary that in a way his father beat the talent into him. Noel was the oldest son in the family and he got the worst treatment out of the 3 kids. He used to share a room with Liam, and then later down the line both Liam and Noel started working for their dad. He wouldn't really get paid much there, sometimes not at all, but it's not like he had too many choices. Even after his mother left his dad, he was forced to work with him for a while because he couldn't find another job. After a while, he finally found a job as a guest subcontractor, and then after that as a salesman in some tool store. This was the first time Noel could catch a break after his horrible childhood, and after a couple of months of working on this store, he bought a guitar and wrote the first few songs of Definitely Maybe. Liam, on the other side, was too young to really get any of his father's anger, but he was obviously old enough to notice what's going on. He said in interviews that his father's behavior affected him too, even if he wasn't the one getting the beating.
People go like, you know, listen, it's terrible what happens when you're in abusive families and all that stuff, but watching it can just be as bad as copying for it, you know what I mean?
But despite all the things they went through, Liam's and Noel's relationship wasn't really the strongest. At the end of the day, their personalities were completely different. Noel was the quiet type who'd focus on his own stuff, and Liam was just, you know, Liam. When he was in school, he got into a fight with a couple boys from another school, and one of them ended up hitting him with a hammer in the head. He ended up in a hospital, and since then, he became the next John Lennon. Before this magical event, Liam thought that music was for nerds and geeks, and he even pissed on Noel's stereo when he was drunk once. So that's how much he didn't care about music. Which makes the fact that he's so good at singing even more impressive.
When you're inside me.
Noel, on the other side, decided to follow his music dreams and ended up auditioning to become a singer for the Inspiral Carpets. Unfortunately, he got denied, but he did end up becoming a roadie for them. Here's a rare 1991 interview that I found from Noel's roadie days. The interviewer asked him if he likes working for the Inspiral Carpets.
Well, I like it more now. I get paid more. I got like a £5 a night when we started, do you know what I mean? And now I get 350 quid a week. And all the crisps I can eat, which is plenty. Do you know what I mean? Says Noel leads into microphone cunnilingus fellatio contact. Noely G in the area.
Real quick, before I continue with the rest of the story, there was supposed to be like a sponsor segment at this part of the video, but unfortunately it didn't happen. So I thought since I'm here anyways, I wanted to let you guys know that my DMs are open. If anyone out there is looking to work with this channel, if you're looking for an editor or a scriptwriter, or if you want to sponsor any of my future videos, make sure to contact me. My email is linked in the description or in the about section of the channel. My Discord server and Twitter are also linked down below if you want to talk more casually. I'm looking for some extra work because I'm planning some very big videos and they take a while to make. Sorry for the shameless plug, back to Oasis. At this time, both Liam and Noel had their eyes on one particular band, and that was of course the Stone Roses.
It was the Stone Roses, it was the Stone Roses. Say it'd either be the Roses or the Mondays, you know what I mean, or something like that. First gig again was the Stone Roses.
Noel actually wanted to be a roadie for them, and Liam just wanted to see them live, and it changed his whole life. He had finally seen a band that represented him on stage, a band that talked like him, acted like him, and grew up like him. That's why the Stone Roses ended up becoming such a massive influence to the band's first album, and Liam made an album with John Squire 30 years later. The two bands would also hang out with each other during the recordings of Definitely Maybe. But while Noel was fucking around and kissing men with the Inspiral Carpets, Liam decided to form a band back home. This was the start of Oasis, or as it was called before Liam came on, The Rain. The Rain was a band well before Liam got this sudden obsession with music, and it was made of Digsy, Bonehead, Tony McCarroll, and some guy named Chris Hutton. Chris was apparently shit at singing, or at least not good enough for Bonehead, and soon got replaced by Liam. Liam, for some fucking reason, was just an incredible singer from the very first days. Now, while all of this was happening, Noel was still being a roadie, and the band actually wrote some songs without him. Can you imagine an Oasis without Noel Gallagher? Well, you don't have to imagine it, because it was recorded.
Take me when I'm young and true. Was it me or was it you?
Despite the very clear Stone Roses influence, this song is surprisingly good and even trended on TikTok for a bit. Liam hates it for some reason. Anyways, pre-Noel Oasis kept practicing together, and eventually they got a gig at the Boardwalk Club in Manchester on the 14th of March 1991. Noel went to see this show, and surprisingly, he was impressed. The rest of the band asked him to be their manager since he had connections from his roadie days, but he said fuck that and became the lead guitarist / songwriter, and even a singer sometimes. He had lots of stuff written. When he walked in, we were a band making a racket with 4 tunes. All of a sudden, there were loads of ideas, said Bonehead. So Oasis was finally formed. All they had to do now was practice. A lot. There's a recording of them practicing in their early days, which I can't show here because it will take the whole video down, but god, they were so good. Listen to how good All Around the World sounded before it got ruined. Rest in peace. Liam and Bonehead were right about Noel having connections though, because he managed to get them a recording studio for a day. While touring for the Inspiral Carpets in North America, Noel had made contact with a Liverpool band called The Real People. In '92, after Oasis had been practicing for a couple of months, Noel called up Tony Griffiths and asked him if he could use his studio to record a demo to help the band get signed. Griffiths and the rest of the band went to check out Oasis live, and they were impressed, so they let them use their studio and even told them a few tricks about playing and recording. In the spring of '93, Oasis recorded their first demo called The Live Demonstration.
Live my life in the city. There's no easy way out.
There's a video on YouTube by The Real People that shows the actual room where Oasis recorded this demo, and it's actually pretty sick. Shout out to those guys for helping Oasis make their first steps. Unfortunately for the band, the demo didn't do jack shit for them to get signed, and now it's like a collector's item. But what was really gonna help them with their career was a new song Noel had managed to write. This song was, of course, Live Forever.
Maybe.
Live Forever was written during the peak of grunge. Nirvana had just released a B-side called I Hate Myself and I Want to Die, and this negativity Kurt had about life pissed off Noel really badly. When he looked at Kurt Cobain, he would see a rock star who had everything he wanted in life, and he would still never be happy, while he himself was working a shitty minimum wage job and had a band who hadn't gotten nowhere yet, and he still had more will to live than anyone else. He thought kids shouldn't have this bleak outlook in life and they should strive for more. There's a lot of people who say that Britpop was the antidote to grunge, and if that's true, then Oasis was the vaccine to Nirvana's dark lyricism. I agree to an extent with what Noel is saying. I think if you keep listening to these depressing bands like Radiohead, Nirvana, The Smiths, Radiohead, it will most definitely affect your mental health, and it's not really gonna help you in life. But at the same time, there's people who find comfort in knowing that there's rockstars out there who are tired of life and feel exactly like you do. Before I continue with this part, I just want to say that Noel had a lot of respect for Kurt Cobain as a person and an artist. I don't want people to think that he had something against him. Also, that's not even the worst thing a Britpop artist has said about Cobain. Now, what does Live Forever actually talk about?
Maybe I don't really wanna know how you got and grows. I just wanna fly.
We start off with some drums and the signature Liam Gallagher.
Maybe.
The song was a dedication to their mother, Peggy Gallagher, and the first lines are actually a reference to her. Noel would spend ages as a kid hanging out in his mother's garden since she was an avid gardener. He's telling her that he's sick of this boring life. He doesn't want to know how her garden grows. He wants to become a star and, fly away. The song continues by Noel questioning his dreams, questioning what he wants to do with his life and with his future.
Maybe I just wanna breathe. Maybe you're the same as me. We see things I'll never see.
The last two lines are probably my favorite part of the song. For me, it talks about knowing somebody who gets you like no one else does. Someone who sees life in the same way as you do, and feels like you've been searching for them forever, and you finally found them. There's speculations that this song was actually dedicated to John Lennon as well, talking about how he saw life in a different way, just like Noel. Then we come to the most important line of the song. You want to spend your whole life with a special person. You believe that this moment is never gonna end and you're gonna live forever. This was a complete opposite of what Kurt Cobain was talking about in his songs, and it's what made so many British people fall in love with the band. Well, the happy British people at least.
Where I came from and the times I grew up in, it was best not to have any ambition. It was quite a bleak time. I never had a life goal until I wrote Live Forever. And then when I wrote Live Forever, I wanted to be in the biggest band in the world.
Another iconic part of the song is also the guitar solo. Noel used to do this thing where he would write the guitar solos to go along with the rest of the song, to be like a part of the whole thing, not just show off that he can play guitar. That's why so many of his guitar solos became legendary. When Noel showed this song to the rest of the band, nobody could believe that it was real. Bonehead kept telling him that he definitely stole it from somewhere and he was gonna find it someday. The song was of course inspired by a Rolling Stones song called Shine a Light. If I had a nickel for every Britpop anthem inspired by a Rolling Stones tune, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but you know how it goes. After writing Live Forever, Noel realized that he was destined for something great, and he fully knew that the band was gonna become huge. The problem was that they hadn't even gotten signed yet. All this would soon change though, because Oasis managed to secure a gig in Glasgow. Well, kinda. The band used to share a rehearsal room with another Manchester band called Sister Lovers. One of the guitarists of the Sister Lovers used to date Alan McGee, a legendary name in the channel and the head of Creation Records. Oasis aside, if you're even the most casual fan of shoegaze, chances are that you've probably listened to one of the bands this guy has managed. So the band rounded up their money, paid like 15 quid per person, got a van and headed straight to Glasgow. The problem was that Oasis was not supposed to be there. They weren't on the bill, nobody knew them, and there wasn't even any time for them to play. Thankfully, the Sister Lovers gave up some of their playtime and let them perform like 4 songs, despite Noel telling a slightly different version of the events. On the other side, Alan McGee had just missed his train to London, and since he had an hour to kill, he went to check out this band called Boyfriend. The stars all aligned together, and by the 4th song, McGee was just completely blown away. He went and gave them a record deal on the spot.
One of these guys from Boyfriend came round to him and said, these guys from Manchester, they kicked us out our dressing room and drank all our cider and threatened to smash the club up. And all it did was get Alan McGee more interested in us. We just did our 4 songs, and then after the gig, Alan McGee came up to us and said, "Are you boys got a record deal?" "No." "Do you want one?" "You have." "Creation, my dear boy." And he offered us a 6-album deal.
So the 2 years of practice and the relentless performances around Manchester finally paid off. This was the start of everything. Noel broke up with his girlfriend, Liam said goodbye to his mom, and the band headed straight to the studio to record their first single. This single was of course Bring It On Down. Yeah, Alan McGee had chosen Bring It On Down as their first single because of the punk attitude of the song, and Noel said fuck it and agreed with him. Unfortunately though, the recording for Bring It On Down went horribly, mostly because of Tony McCarroll not being consistent with his drum playing and the producer not capturing what they were going for. More on that later. Anyways, the band kept trying all day to get the sound right and they were just frustrated. So they headed out to get some Chinese food, but Noel stayed inside working on a new song. When they were back, he presented them his new creation. The one track every Oasis fan had as their top song this year, Supersonic. Supersonic is one of the most quintessential Oasis songs ever. It's the name of their movie, name of their book, Liam Gallagher's favorite song. It's Supersonic, and I don't know how Noel managed to write it in one day, but he did it. He's talked about this a lot, but sometimes you just get that magic handed to you, and luckily for him, it went perfectly with his brother's voice.
I need to be myself. I can't be no one else.
Right off the bat, we have an iconic Oasis line. I need to be myself. This is the slogan for their entire career, and there couldn't be anyone more perfect than Liam Gallagher to sing this line. Noel himself has admitted that Supersonic doesn't sound as good without Liam doing it. This line got misinterpreted by some people, but it's really just a throwaway rhyme, which, you know, I can't blame him if he's writing the lyrics in 30 minutes. Now, the reason why it got misinterpreted is because Noel starts talking about sex. During one of his shows, he meets one of his fans and she asks him for his autograph. This autograph can very well be a phone number, so he's already talking to somebody who deeply admires him. This is where the difference between Noel and the fan becomes more apparent. Noel is supposedly part of a higher class now. He's making money and he's using his money to impress this girl. The BMW is a way to show that he's richer than her, but then he says, except it just being an obvious Beatles reference, this line also talks about his career. The Yellow Submarine shows that he's achieved this wealth because of his musical talent, which in a way means more than money. He's using his fame as a rock star and his status to get into this girl's bed. At this point, he's telling the listener that he should follow his dreams and he should do it now, tying it back to the first part of the song about being yourself.
Nobody can see him, nobody can ever hear him call.
This shows what can happen if you don't become yourself, if you don't go after what you want to do and live your life. You'll be forgotten by everyone and you'll be alone regretting everything. Then we just get the most beautiful guitar part ever. I think I've listened to this song a million times and I never get sick of that guitar. It always hits. In a surprising turn of events though, Noel says this.
I know a girl called Elsa, she's into Alka-Seltzer.
People started thinking that Elsa is an actual girl Noel knew, and the song talked about her story with prostitution and addiction, which, as dark as it is, I think it would have been really impressive for Noel to write this in 30 minutes. Unfortunately though, here he talks about a big dog called Elsa that they had in the recording studio, and apparently she would fart a lot. This is the lyrical genius I've signed up for.
She's sniffing a tissue salad, the big issue.
The big issue is a magazine that was sold by homeless people at the time, and the sniffing only made people believe the prostitution story even more.
Someone told me Supersonic was about teenage prostitution. Shit.
Even though it clearly doesn't have some dark meaning behind it, Supersonic does talk about the dynamic between the band and their fans, which you can interpret in whatever way you want, but I'm guessing they got some fun out of it. Despite all of that, the main point of Supersonic lies on its very first sentence: you need to be yourself. The positivity and sheer confidence of Liam and Noel during their career made for people not only to become a fan of their work, but also get inspired and go on to make their own music. Even outside of music, it just got people to believe in themselves and get out of this depressing cloud that surrounded Britain during the 80s. Going back on Break It On Down though, I think McGee was right when he saw something special in the song, and I'll explain why. There's a part in the Definitely Maybe documentary where Noel says this.
I don't think there's any way to say this without sounding like a twat, so I'll just say it anyway. But it's actually about, I wouldn't say it's an anti-establishment song, but it's about people, because we were all on the dole at the time and under Conservative rule and that, and it's about establishment figures who didn't really have a clue about how people were living in England at that time.
He's talking about Up in the Sky, but notice how he's hesitant to point out that the song has a political message behind it. He doesn't want to make it obvious for the listener, or maybe he thinks that he's taking this moral high ground by talking about class issues out loud, but nonetheless, the message is still there. A big part of this album talks about class divide and what it means growing up in a working class environment, and I think Noel does his best job on bringing it on down. Noel talks about his life being a blur. He has no idea what's happening around him or how he's gonna get out of this situation. The situation being, of course, poverty, which was pretty common in 80s Manchester. But now he's an adult approaching the new decade and he has no direction for his future. He can't find someone to help him or at least someone to blame for all of this. He's stuck. As I said before, he talks about being working class or the underclass. He's aware of his position and he's aware that no one's out there to welcome him with open arms. This line also talks about Oasis becoming this iconic band despite none of them going to some fancy art school or having musician parents who may help them with their career. Their music and their lyrics stand out from the other bands at the time and some people resent them for that. They're the outcasts and they're not meant to be there. But none of the boys care about all of this. They don't care what the media thinks of them, or if other bands think they're superior to Oasis. They're just out here because they want to play some rock and roll and be themselves. This is one of my favorite lines in the whole album because it talks about their whole career. At the same time, it describes every working class man who has ever achieved anything. You're living in a system that doesn't want you to succeed and wants you to keep your head down and work for them your whole life. But you make the impossible happen, beat all odds and end up at the top. You're the uninvited guest who stays till the end. The people talking about you can be other bands or the media talking shit about them. You never know who's the enemy and who's your friend in this industry. I know this song was written way before the band even got signed, but to me it has aged like fine wine and it's gotten a whole other meaning now that the band has become this big. This line can also talk about celebrities or musicians who pretend to be working class, who pretend to be just like you, but you never really know how they grew up. Bring it down for me, go for your dreams and achieve what you always wanted to achieve. Leave behind the unclarity of your early years and do something with your life, despite how hard it may seem. The song is like the most punk song you'll find on the album, and a lot of people say that Definitely Maybe got a lot of inspiration from the Sex Pistols, which is fair enough because they probably did. But Bring It On Down in particular was actually inspired by the Stooges and MC5.
For my part, all those songs have a political undercurrent to them because I was just writing from the heart. I didn't sit down and think, let's talk politics, let's get to the bottom of this shit, do you know what I mean? But at that point, I was unemployed in rented accommodation trying to make my way in the world. Living from one week to the next, not knowing if you're going to have enough money for a pizza. You're in a political situation even if you don't realise it. Because that is the battleground, do you know what I mean? That is the essence of politics. Accommodation, food, and trying to make a living.
Easily one of my favourite songs in their whole discography, and I think it's an underrated gem. But before the band decided to scrap Bring It On Down, they had an interesting clash with the British media, and they managed to get on the news before even releasing Supersonic. This was all because of a little fight they had on the ferry to Amsterdam. It was 1994 and Creation Records had gotten the band their first international gig as a support act for The Verve, which I just made a video on by the way. The boys were gonna play in the Netherlands. Keyword were. Before they even got into this ferry to the Netherlands, the band had already gone around Manchester trying to secure some for the way. So right off the bat, they were already cooked, and luckily for them, the ferry was filled with West Ham fans, something that Noel will mention pretty soon. So they get in, drink a bunch of alcohol on top of all the coke they were already on, and things go exactly where you expect them to go. Somebody somewhere starts a fight, and Liam, of course being Liam, jumps at the first opportunity he can get to punch some guy in the face. The whole fucking bar starts fighting, and everyone except Noel gets kicked out of the ferry and deported. So, before they even released their first song, Oasis was already on the news for their bad boy behavior. Alan McGee was just impressed with how easy it was for the band to get everyone's attention, and he said, this is my best Scottish, I'm gonna try my best Scottish impression since I have a Scot in the video. Fucking hell man, I've been trying to make Teenage Fan Club interesting for 5 years. No. I've been trying to make Teenage Fan Club interesting for 5 years. Look what you've landed here. Noel on the other side, being the only responsible adult there, was fucking pissed at them, especially Liam. Luckily for us, this anger was recorded in a 1994 interview between the brothers.
These lot think it's rock and roll to get thrown off a ferry.
No, don't.
To get shut up. These lot think it's rock and roll to get thrown. Shut the fuck up, man. These lot think. And we're gonna have to say this. Fact, are you gonna shut up? These lot think it's rock and roll to get thrown off a ferry, right? To come into hotel fires, to get everybody at it, and they go, shut up. They start thinking, hey, it's rock and roll.
This interview was then released as a single in '95 after the band got big and managed to hit number 25 on the single chart. And do you know how fucking crazy that is? The interview was released by Fierce Band under the name Oasis without an I. So it wasn't released by the band itself, it wasn't even a song, and it got number 25 on the charts. Just shows how massive the band was in '95. Anyways, just like with the first recording of Bring It On Down, the band and their manager were not happy with how the whole thing was sounding. The songs were brilliant when you heard them live, but the production ruined all the feeling they had. So they fired Dave Batchelor and then got Mark Coyle along with Noel to produce the album in the Sawmill Studios. Now, the Sawmill Studios were A, on a lake, which made it harder for the band to get booze because they had to get to the studio by a boat and they couldn't travel after like 10 PM, and B, these studios were actually haunted, at least according to Liam. So Bonehead took advantage of this and did a trick with a newspaper and a fishing line.
I'm doing the newspaper. I just started pulling it so the page started curling open. Held it vertical and then let go of it so the line just dropped. Did you fucking see that? And we were like, see what? And he's like, that fucking newspaper just opened and shut. I say, I'm sure it did. It's just the wind. Oh, I am really doing the accents justice, aren't I? And he's saying, no, it did. It did. It can't have done. But you could see him watching it. So I did it again. Then I really tugged it so the whole newspaper just went fuck off the table. So we all jumped up like, whoa! Liam was shitting it because he didn't know anything about it. So he really jumped up. Someone took the trainer. So as he headed for the door, a pair of Adidas trainers just scooted across the floor. He was done. He was off. Down the fields. See you later, Liam.
Despite all that, the Sawmill Studios were also disappointing, and the band finally hired Owen Morris, who went on to produce all their 90s albums, and they moved to Johnny Marr's studio. After months of recording and re-recording and moving studios again and again, the album was finally done. On the 29th of August 1994, Oasis released Definitely Maybe. Boom, right into the first track, we have one of the best songs the band has ever made. Noel has often said that Rock and Roll Star is his favorite Oasis track and his greatest musical achievement. As soon as you get into the album, you understand what the band is for. It's a rock and roll band who's not gonna stop no matter what. That's what Oasis was all about, and soon after the album was released, Liam and Noel started living the life they were talking about in their lyrics. The first two lines talk about Manchester, specifically growing up poor in Manchester and how hard it is to leave that city, to leave that life.
The days may be just too fast for me. I need some time in the sunshine.
Life is coming to him like a train, and he doesn't know what he should do, what he needs to do to get out of the city. Also, here we have the iconic Liam Gallagher,
Sunshine!
I live my life for the stars that shine.
So Noel dedicates his life into becoming a star that shines. He wants to become a rock star and leave his shitty life behind, and he's gonna do whatever it takes, even if no one believes in him.
Then they said I should feed my head. That to me was just a day in bed.
The Feed My Head part was taken by a John Lennon quote, and it also inspired Don't Look Back in Anger. I like this part the most, not just because it's a chorus, but it can also apply to everyone. Sometimes life is not going the way you want it to go, and there's some special nights that give comfort to you. You can be with your friends or your girlfriend, and even if it's just for one night, everything is finally going right. You forget every worry you have, and you feel like you're on top of the world. Tonight, you're a rock and roll star. I don't know if Noel intended this in particular, but that's the feeling this song gives to me. Sometimes when things are nice for a change, you put on this song and you get this adrenaline rush that you've been missing for ages. Same goes with Heroes by David Bowie, who gives me a similar feeling. The lyrics repeat again, with Noel adding,
Look at you now, you're all in my arms tonight.
This talks about the talent the brothers had to perform live and really impress an audience. And as they got bigger, the whole world, or at least the British Isles, were in their hands. Also, in my opinion, it's like a way to get back to the people who didn't believe in you. You're in my hands now. You can't say anything because I proved everyone wrong. At the end of the day, none of this really matters though, because the band is just here to play some rock and roll and have fun.
It's just rock and roll.
The second track on the album is also the second single of the band, and it's none other than Shakermaker. The song was a brave decision for a single, seeing how there's so many songs in this album that would have probably gotten more commercial success, but I respect it. 93-94, when this song was written and produced, were also the years where shoegaze started popping off for a bit, and I think there's a bit of shoegaze influence on this particular track. You know, if not shoegaze, psychedelic, whatever you want to call it, but probably inspired by the Verve's first album. The intro is trippy, and it gives you a hint of what the song is gonna be about. The melody was actually stolen from a song called I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing, which got used in a Coca-Cola ad in the 70s. The band got sued hard for this, and they had to pay £500,000, with Noel saying that from now on they only drink Pepsi. The title Shakermaker was actually a toy Noel had in the 70s, so the 70s are a recurring theme in the song. We immediately contradict the first line in Supersonic by saying that we want to be somebody else. This contrast between the lyrics adds to the psychedelic feeling of the song, but I think there's more than just that. I think in Shakermaker, Noel is actually talking about his childhood, and how he doesn't want this life and he wants to be somebody else. There's a lot of references to toys and plasticine and Noel's childhood. Another example is Mr. Soft is a character from a candy commercial when he was a kid. Mr. Clean is a song by The Jam, a band Noel grew up with, and Mr. Ben was a British cartoon. There's a lot of people who say that Noel didn't mean anything with this song and it's a bunch of nonsense lyrics he thought on the spot, which they're probably right, but I still think they can be appreciated. These references to old commercials and cartoons make it so the song becomes a memory trip. You're reminiscing about your childhood, lost in the past, and then Liam comes along with a beautiful voice that sounds like he's high, which he probably was. I think Shakermaker is a pretty impressive song, despite the fact that Noel did steal the melody. It shows the range of Oasis, something that starts to fade out in the later years. I wish they did more psychedelic stuff, but if you're looking for a song similar to this, I suggest you listen to Alive, an Oasis demo that I think is one of the most underrated things the band has ever done.
You want something for nothing, the higher that you climb, the longer you fall.
Liam refuses to perform this song live for some reason, which I don't know why, because he sounds fucking amazing in it.
'Cause I got time.
You know, for a band who basically killed the shoegaze scene by just existing, they're pretty good at this shit. Right after that, we have another slightly political song, and that's of course Up in the Sky. Except that clip I showed earlier where it says it's about establishment figures, he's also mentioned that the song is about the rock stars.
It's basically about people who think that they're the voice of a generation or the figurehead of a movement. It's just saying, why are you lot down here looking up at him? The band is about the music, it's about the songs, it's not about us. I wouldn't ever make a political speech, and I'd sack anyone in the band who started doing that shit, do you know what I mean? We are overtly political once every 5 years when we go and vote for Labour. But then we turn around and go back to being a band again.
Now, I don't know how you can be non-political and also publicly endorse the Labour Party, but don't worry, because this was not the only time Noel mentioned that. He also encouraged people to go vote for Tony Blair at the 96 Brit Awards.
There are 7 people in this room tonight who are giving a little bit of hope to young people in this country. That is me, our kid, Bonehead, Twigsy, Alan White, Alan McGee and Tony Blair. And if you've all got anything about you, you get up there and you shake Tony Blair's hand, man. He's a man. Power to the people!
He went and then met him in 97 after Labour had won the election, and this picture became a staple of the Cool Britannia era. This whole fiasco aged terribly though, because Tony Blair supported the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Noel still stood by his words though, saying that Tony Blair was the last PM to make sense. I don't know too much about Tony Blair to comment on any of this, but I got my overtly political Scottish friend to make a quick explanation about it.
You've got to understand that by the time of Noel's endorsement, the Conservatives have been in power for almost 20 years. Most of that being under Thatcher, and well, I think we all know how we feel about her. And for what it's worth, Tony Blair did do a lot of good, peace in Northern Ireland being a pretty bloody major one. But all of this is sort of overshadowed by the elephant in the room, that is the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people thanks to the Iraq war. Yeah, not great. He did actually win an election after the Iraq war, but certainly in the years since, this is mostly just what Tony Blair is remembered for. At the time of Noel's endorsement though, he was basically as universally popular as a politician could be in Britain. This was before we knew he would spend most of his prime ministership trying to suck George W. Bush's cock, and at this particular point in time, Blair represented hope and optimism. He wasn't like your granddad's politicians, he was cool. Look at all these rock stars he's hanging out with. But yeah, as Crisis says, hasn't aged fantastically. I'll probably do a video about Tony Blair at some point on my channel, and I'm also probably going to do my own video about Oasis in a couple of months, so edge of the map, subscribe.
I think bands being quote-unquote non-political is kinda lame, but endorsing a PM is risky business. I like to talk about the working class as a whole, even outside of the UK, because I think these songs apply to everyone out there. The message of the song still stands though. If you're talking about politicians or celebrities, most of them don't know what you're going through. They're completely detached from the reality of your everyday person, and Noel hates the fact that they try to take this moral high ground. You don't know shit about the state of the world unless you grew up living like the people you're trying to preach a message to. Easiest example of this, fucking Kim Kardashian telling people that they need to work more.
Get your fucking ass up and work. It seems like nobody wants to work these days.
How does it feel when you're inside me?
No, this part is not about gay sex. Okay, maybe just a little bit.
How does it feel when you're inside me? Should we consider Up in the Sky to be a gay anthem?
I mean, yeah, if you want, absolutely. Lord knows what I was actually thinking while I was singing that. Fuck knows.
Maybe
I was
about your geography teacher and I mean, how does it feel when
That'd
you're
be different.
inside me? It's hard to find any other meaning in that.
I don't know.
With the context from the rest of the song, I'm guessing it talks about how does it feel when you're in his place. Asking these celebrities and politicians if they know the struggles he grew up with, or he's asking them to be inside him, but I'll let you guys decide. The rest of the song goes on with Noel trying to talk to these higher class people. Hypothetically, the person he's talking about is going through some stuff, or he's trying to relate to you by showing how hard his life is. But in reality, he can never really understand your struggles unless he lived through them. Now they have problems too, but Noel doesn't feel pity about them. This is how life is for everyone, and they need to get used to it. If the shine has gotten out of your life, well, that's too bad. You need to get up and keep working. You think other people don't hate their jobs and their lives? They do, but they don't have a choice. They need to survive. I think musically, this song is like classic Oasis guitar, and Liam's voice is just as good as always. It's a pretty nice track, even though it's not as famous as some other songs on the album. It's not like it's too underrated. What is underrated though is Colombia. I love Colombia, and only recently did I realize that it's not one of their top songs stream-wise. Right off the bat, we have these sound effects and mic sounds and people shouting that get you in the mood for the song. There's a sample in the intro that was recorded when Oasis first wrote the song with the real people, and it says, and there's not much the band has said about this, but I think it shows how people react, at least initially. They're disgusted and scared. The song is named after the hotel the band was staying at, and it was written when Noel was on an acid trip, if you couldn't tell already. The intro goes on for 1 whole minute, continuing to build anticipation, something that they probably took from the Stone Roses, and then at exactly 1:07 we hear Liam singing. The whole song is pretty much an acid trip. Noel explaining how he feels when he took it and his reaction. It does remind me a little bit of those guys who do acid once and they suddenly discover empathy and they can't shut the fuck up about it, but it goes along nicely with the song, so I can't say much. He's again talking about the same thing, but for some reason this line got stuck in my head, because I think it can be applied to a lot of things in life. Your first time moving out, getting your life together, growing up, or falling in love. You can't really explain how you feel, because everything is so new to you. You just have this feeling of euphoria. This whole thing makes the song even more trippy, and the band does an amazing job at just continuing this feeling for the whole 6-minute duration. You just get lost into the song. And of course, it couldn't be a 6-minute Oasis track without a classic Noel guitar solo. Then by the end you have Liam singing "Come on, come on, come on," which gets combined with the guitar and they almost become part of one another. Apparently this was the first song Noel wrote with Oasis, which I think makes sense because you can tell it's a group effort. Bonehead said that this is his favorite track, and I kind of agree with him. There's a Sawmill version that got released recently where Liam's voice sounds more authentic and raw, and that sounds amazing as well. Next up we have a fan favorite among the young fans of the band, and it's none other than Cigarettes and Alcohol. Despite how amazing that intro riff is and how hype it gets you as soon as it starts, the riff is actually ripped from T-Rex's Get It On. It's so obvious that it's stripped off and it's not like Noel has denied it, but you can listen to whatever version you prefer, I guess. I like the Oasis version because it talks about the 2 things I like in life. It's really funny that I'm trying to analyze the song, but you can pretty much guess the message from its title. The only thing that makes life worth living for Noel is cigarettes and alcohol, and maybe some coke on the side. This doesn't just talk about the booze though, it talks about Noel's new exciting life. The band has finally given him something to live for. His life was missing some action. He lacked motivation and excitement. You know, when you're living like he did in the 80s, barely passing by, there's not much that excites you in life. So he finds an escape from this by using alcohol and other stuff, because that's the only thing that brings him some action. It's the only good part of his day. Noel had stated that this song was like the main ethos of Definitely Maybe. At the end of the day, it's all about leaving Manchester, drinking some beer and having fun with your friends. It's about escaping, even if it's just for a day, and that message can be found on almost every song of this record. I think it was Liam who said this, but this is one of the first songs to play in the radio who actively encouraged the use of the white powder. Now, Brett is everywhere, and all that album talks about is white powder, so they were truly pioneers. But this song doesn't just play on the radio once or twice, it entered the UK top 75 charts 10 times in the span of 2 years. People fucking love this shit. And of course, it couldn't be an Oasis song without that push to go forwards and never give up. This is your life, and you have to take it by the rails and make the best of it. This is what Oasis is all about. You have got to make it happen. Now we have arguably the worst song on this album, and it's called Digsy Dinner. There's no point in me trying to give some hidden meaning to this song because it was written as a joke. It just talks about picking up some girl for tea at 3:30 and then you guys can have. There's one line I like on this whole thing, except the lasagna part, and that's I know Noel didn't mean anything by any of this, but I like this part. I think when you're young, you tend to stress a lot about what you're gonna do. You think that these are the best years of your life, and you're supposed to have fun and enjoy everything, but you don't. You think you're just wasting them, and you're never gonna get this opportunity again when you're older, which ends up making you even more stressed. This goes against every other message Noel tries to convey in this album, but you know, that's what it always meant to me. Now, who the fuck is Digsy? Well, that would be Peter Deary, a long friend of Noel's. The whole song came from a bit Digsy was doing in the studio, and he fucking hates this song more than everyone else.
I think it's the worst song Oasis have ever written. I fucking hate it with a vengeance.
Digsy then made a song about Noel called Noel's Nose. Alan McGee has stated that Digsy's Dinner was kind of like a jab at Blair. It's Noel showing that he can write these Britpop songs in his sleep. It's nothing for him. And you know, I kind of like this song. It's a nice tune, and like, who doesn't like lasagna? The better jab at Britpop though is Bonehead's Bank Holiday. That song really shows that Noel can write a hit in 2 seconds. Okay, it's finally the song we've all been waiting for. Often cited by fans as the best song Noel Gallagher has ever written, is the one and only, the masterpiece, Slide Away. Here we have the first ever love song Noel has written. And when I mean love song, I mean love song. Slide Away was written about Louise Jones, who Noel dated for 6 years, and she was basically his soulmate, at the time at least. The song talks about how Noel feels because of her love. His head is dizzy and he doesn't know what's happening with his days. All he wants to do is slide away with her. He's thinking about her all day and he starts dreaming about their life together. Hold Me Down means that he's hers. He wants to be with her forever, and everyone else in the world seems boring to him. Louise had completely changed the way he sees life, and he needs to be with her. He wants to grow old with her, even if she might be scared of the future. In classic Oasis fashion, Noel doesn't care how the future will go. He's not scared of it. He wants to live in the moment. Now that he's got his girl, he's gonna find a way to make the impossible possible. He wants to achieve his dreams with her by his side. He wants to shine with her. Despite being written for Louise, this song can also be applied to Noel's and Liam's relationship. They're chasing their dreams together and they don't care what happens. They're gonna make this band work together. And that brings us to my favorite part of this song. Liam wouldn't be where he is without Noel's writing, and Noel wouldn't be where he is without Liam's incredible voice. They need each other and they make each other great. So they don't care about what anyone else says, all they know is that they can help each other achieve their dreams.
I might have been a singer in a band, but I wouldn't have been as exciting or as big without him. But he doesn't see that. He constantly needs to reassure himself that he's vital to what Oasis is, do you know what I mean? When we're doing these big stadium gigs and there's 60,000 people shouting, Liam! Liam! It's like, is that not enough for you? So I just put it down to, he's a fucking idiot. But he's my idiot, I guess.
That's the sweetest thing Noel has ever said about his brother, and I think this song in particular is a testament to their love. When Noel is doing backing vocals saying that he doesn't care and he just knows Liam will take him there, and then you hear Liam singing Slide Away, that's the most beautiful thing the band has ever written. Every time it repeats, it just hits harder and harder. That's why that 2009 performance where Liam is just singing angrily and Noel is on the verge of tears just breaks your heart. They couldn't have chosen a better song to play before their breakup. Luckily, the brothers are back together and you can finally hear Slide Away the way it's supposed to be played. Okay, last song on the album is the TikTok song. British TikTok memes aside, I quite like this song. I think it's one of Noel's best works, especially lyrically. The song was inspired by an 80s sitcom called Married with Children. At the time of writing this, Noel was living with Louise, and sharing a house with her was becoming increasingly more difficult. He would look at the sitcom and see his relationship there. I looked at them touring the show and looked at us too, and I thought, that's us, that is.
I don't care no more, so don't you worry.
But I think the fact that the song is called Married with Children adds to the sadness of the song. These two people were once incredibly in love and they got married and had kids, but now all the love has faded away and they can't stand each other. The only thing that's keeping them together is their kids. So the song is just a list of petty things they hate about their partner.
Your music's shine, it keeps me up all night, up all night.
The shite music mentioned here is actually Oasis songs. Noel would keep up his girlfriend all night by practicing his guitar and she would hate it. She would tell him that his music's shit, she hates his songs. Noel can try and take a break by living at his mom's for a week, but at the end of the day, he has to get back to her. When you're married and your love has faded away, sometimes you feel trapped. You don't want to leave this relationship because you've spent so many years together, and you gotta think about the kids as well, but at the end of the day, you just know that the end is coming soon. I like the with you part that repeats over and over. It kinda shows that Noel is trapped in this loop, this mundane routine of unhappiness, and he's unable to escape. In his head, he's stuck with her. Two very contrasting songs to end the album, but I love them both equally. I will kill anyone who says that Married with Children should have been played on electric. Idiots! This video ended up much longer than I expected it to be, so I'm gonna try and wrap it up fast. I think Definitely Maybe is the definition of a working class anthem. Sure, there's other albums that make their message more clear and they're more lyrically rich, like Different Class by Pulp, but Oasis truly captures the essence of that time. You can tell the band actually grew up struggling, and the confidence they have about themselves and their future brings you such an adrenaline rush. It doesn't matter where you're from or how you grew up, you need to get up, get your life together, and be a rock and roll star. And I think that's the message everyone needs in their life. This album is very special to me because it's the first thing that actually got me to believe in myself. I don't think this channel would exist without this album, and no other record can do that for me. I hope you guys liked this video. I know I loved making it. Make sure to subscribe to Edge of the Map because he helped me a lot with the Noel bits. Check out my Discord and Patreon linked in the description, and subscribe because it will help a lot. These videos are hard to make. Goodbye!